Well, we find ourselves here today in South Dakota, in just outside of Pine Ridge, the site of Wounded Knee. But we've been very lucky through Tom Cook to meet another elder, and this is Yellowhair. And Yellowhair, where do you call home?
I called my home is in my heart of my home is in the Black Hills of what they call South Dakota today. To me, I live on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. It's the second largest reservation in the United States, but I call it a glorified concentration camp. Because this is where they stuck us after Manifest Destiny had its say in doings. But my heart is always within in the Black Hills. We call it the heart of everything that is, and it's because it was there that our nation was dreamed from a dream world into reality. And this is where we visioned our sun dances, our sweat lodge ceremonies, our hambalecha, the vision seeking, the family making, all of these things that are important for us. So that is where the Black Hills is the center of our existence, and to this day, whatever we do, we always do it in defense of the Black Hills, and someday to have that return back to us as a nation, with its center intact.
Now, your nation, you are?
The Lakota people are also often called Sioux Indians. Sioux Indians is a name, of course, given to us by the French, and kind of like misinterpreted through the Ojibwe people, the Anishinaabe as they're called nowadays. And the Oglala Lakota people is one of 7 bands of the Great Sioux Nation. And we're probably the most storied one, as they always say. Our chiefs included Red Cloud, our chiefs included people like Crazy Horse, American Horse, Little Wound, Young Men Afraid of His Horses, things like this that with the type of names that we have in the past time. So the Oglala Lakota people are probably what we call the most western part of the Great Sioux Nation. We're the ones that are living in sight of the Black Hills. And it is there that we say that we came to breathe the air of this nation that we are living in today. Then we followed the buffalo out of the Black Hills onto the prairie, and the rest has all been documented through all types of books. But remember one thing, not one book has been written by Lakota people. Everything has been written about us by our enemies and those who think that they're Lakota people. And I say that because there are indigenous authors, writing about Lakota situation, but none of them are what you would call a traditional speaking Lakota person who understood and grew up, knowing, or descendants of treaty signers. My name is Milo Yellowhair. That's what the white man called me. My people, they call me Tchanka Omania. Tchanka Omania is basically a traveler, is the name traveler. But basically, the name that I come from 2 big major families on this reservation. One is called the Two Lance family, and the other one is called the Looking Horse. And way back when we were subjugated and put into our homes in areas where we're at, one of the things that happened was that there was a translation of names. And one of my grandfathers, his name was called Gigi. Basically, Gigi is too much sun on black hair. But when he went to the bureau to give his name, the translators there gave him the name Yellowhair. And his brother, his name was called Kashunke Wakita. That means his horse is looking out for him. But so they translated his name to Looking Horse, and they gave my grandfather the name Yellowhair, although they were brothers. And they got to choose a name from the wall. And one brother chose the name Lincoln, and the other one chose the name Louis. So, there's names that are right next to each other on the wall, So that's how Louis Yellowhair and Lincoln Looking Horse, my great-grandfathers, started what we call the modern-day Lakota people. And so this is how we got to do it. So we were first subjugated, then we were labeled, and then we were given numbers, And we always say Pine Ridge Indian Reservation is under the Bureau of Indian Affairs is number 3 4-4. It was a military designation where Lakota people were going to be confined. And this is the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. So, and Rosebud to the east of us, is 4-3-4-2, and so on and so forth, with all the different bands of the Great Sioux Nation. And so the Great Sioux Nation itself today has manifested into several different tribal groups. One is we call the Santee Sioux, and mostly like Flandreau Indian Reservation, Santee Sioux of Nebraska, the Sisseton, Wahpeton, up there in the north part of the state of Nebraska, South Dakota. And then we have all of the other bands of the Cheyenne River Reservation. We have the Crow Creek Reservation, the Lower Brule Reservation. We have the Yankton Sioux Reservation. We have the Rosebud Reservation. And then we have Pine Ridge. And there are 9 reservations within the state of South Dakota. And each one of us have kind of separated and kind of lost direction from each other. And so there's really no cohesiveness in what we call the Great Sioux Nation. And this is a big problem, because every time we sued the federal government for treaty violations in the past, we went under the name the Great Sioux Nation versus the United States of America. And later when I did some research, and they call it the Great Sioux Nation of Indians. And of course, everybody knows we're not Indians. We really come from India, and yet that's what they decided to call us. And so today we're trying to make a living here on this Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Average income is probably around 4,000 people. We are probably about on the reservation close to 24,000 people on the reservation. And as I mentioned before, we are about almost 110 miles by 70-mile reservation. And most of it is badlands and a few prairie areas, mostly good for cows and things like that. But it's ironic that the federal government, once they put us on a reservation, they gave us the badlands and told us, go, Mr. Indian, you're going to be a farmer there. And we've been trying to raise food on this reservation for some time, and of course this is also the place where the pride of being an indigenous person within what we come to know as the United States of America blossomed back in the 1970s. And it was a movement that started in the prison systems, and most people today know it as the American Indian movement. But it had to have a center, and it had to have a spiritual base, and that is what the Lakota people provided for the young, disaffected indigenous peoples coming from the cities. And we were able to bring tradition, history, language, and most importantly, rights. We have a right to be who we are. That is something that it's easy to say, but hard to live. Well, mostly because, the idea that, we can't be who we were born to be. And that is a really, really big problem here on this reservation. We have been subjugated, our children have been separated from our families a long time ago through the boarding school systems. Our traditional chiefs' leaderships, children were sent away to places like Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where they had their school over there. They sent them to Hampton University out there on the East Coast, also to a little place in Nebraska called Genoa, also a part of these things. But the problem was, if you want to break the Lakota people, you have to separate the families. And that is exactly what happened. And once they did that, English took hold, the American way of life took hold, and of course all the attendant problems, things like lack of respect, the lack of vision, the lack of a future that was so tuned into the natural state of life in this country before Columbus ever came here. And this is the reason why, as we see, this little part of this great, great Sioux Nation was everything from almost from the Mississippi River all the way to the Rocky Mountains. At one time, under the 1861 treaty, we were part of 7 different, what they call modern-day states. And through the 1868 treaty, we were part of 5 different parts of the states of South, and that includes South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, and Montana. And so this was our traditional area, and we have been living here. We get to see it, but it's like goldfish. We lived inside of this little goldfish bowl, and we get to see everything else, and all of the things that happen to our people, But, the biggest tragedy is how much buffalo that they kill, because the buffalo is something that we as the Lakota people relied on since time immemorial. Our creation stories say that we followed the buffalo out of the Black Hills into this light of day, as what we call modern-day South Dakota.
Now, we're going to take a slight break here. I'm going to break this up into segments so I can get it all. Hold on.